Well, now we're going to get into our conversation. I'm thrilled to have with us John Griffin, who is the owner of Clearway Forward. John, welcome.
All right, thanks, Tim. Happy to be here.
So John, we were chatting recently at a chamber event, and you were telling me a little bit about what your company does, and you've gotten involved with the chamber. And I'm kind of excited about this conversation because, most of our 2,300 member businesses that are in the region are small, medium-sized businesses. Mm-hmm. They're hardworking, focused on product delivery, making a product, delivering a service, and they don't do it alone. It's usually them and their employees, and they're focused on that. But to get the results you need, sometimes you got to step back. Sometimes you've got to bring in a third party to maybe help make sure that you're more effective, more efficient, communicating, and that's really at the core of what your company does.
That's correct. That's right.
But before we get into some of those examples,
Sure.
First I want to start by saying thank you for your service, 28 years in the United States Marine
Sure.
Corps.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And
it's a privilege.
You started at
1988, as a young enlisted guy, as a private, E1, and then 28 years later, retired as a lieutenant colonel.
And so probably that experience and that perspective makes you even more, maybe knowledgeable in terms of what you can offer companies. So you've gone up the ranks and supervised a whole bunch of Marines
Right.
Underneath your command. Certainly no organization in the world puts more effort, resources, study into organizational management, leadership development than the United States military.
Right.
And so you bring that perspective to the work when working with companies as well, teams, communication.
Yeah, exactly right. So thank you for all that. Yeah, I think even in the Marine Corps, it served as a unique resource to start off as a private and understand what it looked like from the bottom up. And then when I commanded a battalion of 935 Marines, right, then I understood what they were thinking, right? So I could build those connections. I could understand better how to communicate with them. And I appreciate what you say about the investment into the military, because most people think the military is about a general sitting in the hill. He says, go right, and the whole army pivots, right? But my experience in the Marine Corps and Special Operations, we're very decentralized, right? Our leadership just tells us what they want accomplished, and they leave the how up to us. So our strength is our autonomy. And a lot of people don't know that. They think they saw a Full Metal Jacket, and they're like, oh, I understand the Marine Corps. And that's just not it.
No, it's as you mentioned, it's the objective and training people to have the teamwork, the communications to
Yes.
achieve that objective. And quite frankly, when people study military history, that has been one of the things that's made the U.S. military unique, that ability to, from the enlisted to new officers, that ability to adapt to circumstances, make decisions, but with the objective in mind at the
Right.
end of what you need to achieve.
Yeah, we define it as commander's intent, right? So it's up to whether you're a CEO or you're a commanding officer, right, to develop an inspiring, compelling vision, right? That's very specific, that people understand, like, this is what we're working towards, right? And that's what my company offers, is how to build strategic alignment within the company. So from your C-suite executives, middle management, frontline supervisors, when they're making decisions, they understand what the strategy is, and they're always thinking at least 2 levels up. Most people show up to work and they're like, oh, what do I have to do today? What we want them to do is think within the context of not only what does my boss need, right, but what does her boss need? What pressures is she feeling, right? Where does her requirements? So now if you're making decisions that's aligned with 2 levels up, you create speed within the organization, right? You create an execution mindset, right? Decentralized execution. And today's speed is a strategic asset.
Yeah, in any company. And so really what you've described is, empowering and informing
Yes.
employees at every level of a flow chart, org chart, chain of command.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing. I mean, there's, could be the receptionist at the front desk.
Absolutely.
To the individual that's ordering and packaging supplies, to the people making it, to the people out marketing and selling it, and customer relations and services. They each got to know their role, but then how it interrelates.
Right, absolutely. And I would add to that, right now I'm pursuing my doctorate at Northeastern in organizational leadership. And one of my theories that I'm developing is called the arc of leadership. And just real quickly, if you go back to the pharaohs, right, they were God on earth, right? Fast forward to the industrial age CEO, sat at the head of the table, all the information went up and down to him. Today's environment, you can't operate like that, right? So leadership is an organizational function. So your example of the receptionist, she can lead within her sphere, within her context, within her environment, and contribute. And we have to kind of flip that, where CEOs learn how to embrace that and how to empower that and give them the freedom and opportunity to act, and then support their decision making.
And making sure that that decision making, is, like you said, in the framework, strategically aligned.
Yes,
yeah. So one of the things, we were chatting as we got ready for the show was, you used a line that I love, communication, maniacal communication, and just an example of that. Just repeat, just reinforcing.
Right. So unfortunately, a lot of businesses, right? I mean, they do a good job setting up like an annual management conference, right? And they'll build out a strategy, but quite often that strategy just turns into a white binder that sits on someone's bookshelf, and they don't understand it. The CEO has to learn how to communicate effectively, and it's that maniacal communication. So what I recommend is you build a phraseology, right, that becomes part of your lexicon. That you speak it freely, right? You speak it openly in every context. And whether it's in your emails, whether it's in your personal conversations with individuals, whether it's in your letterhead, it's all over the place. So you have to breathe it into life. And it's not just about one time saying, oh, we covered that at the management conference and now we're done. That's not how effective communication happens. Like, again, my expression, you have to breathe it into life as a CEO.
All right, and so when you talk about that, a management conference, that's when you get your leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
But to execute and get the results you want, it's every person on every box in that flow chart, and strategies. You mentioned living and breathing it into life, but maybe some examples of some companies you've been working with and the ways that you work with them.
Sure. So most recently, I was down in Florida working with a conservation firm, and I thought they wrote a great strategy. Their executive leadership, but all they really did was just launch a 5-year strategy, and some degree kind of wait to see what happened. So what we did was we went in and we worked with the different departments underneath them to understand how do you read and interpret a strategy based on your own department, right? So what is it they're actually looking for and where can you contribute? And we teach them not only to identify what we call measures of performance, right, measuring what you do and how you can contribute, but we also teach them how to articulate measures of effectiveness. So everyone counts. Like if I'm a teacher, I taught 6 classes this week, that's great, but how do you know you were effective? So we teach them how do you measure effectiveness in what you're doing. And what you can also do then is what we taught them is then how do you look at the strategy and how do you relate to your boss where you can be successful, but where you may not have the resources and maybe you're not able to accomplish what they think you can. So now you're articulating risk to the CEO, and the CEO's world is accepting risk and prioritizing. Mm-hmm. And that creates a better communication cycle, right, up and down the chain of command, up and down the organizational leadership, right? How do you open up communication? Well, it starts with centralizing on the strategy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I assume that kind of process involves some level of engagement or communication when you go in with the employees up and down the line?
Yeah, so there's a couple of models, right? So certainly I can come in and do a keynote speech, right? 30 minutes, well, I'll talk, right? And share stories, right? Because stories have legs. And then spend time with you at the conference. I can do a workshop. Usually it's 8 hours. I recommend it over 2 days. But really where you'll get your long-term investment is if we make a long-term commitment, right? It's a 4-month program. I'll come in once a month. And we get a cross-section of your leadership, right? High potential employees, frontline supervisors, middle management, at least one C-suite executive to participate in this program. Right? And that's how you create synergy. So I'll come in once a month, right? We'll work for about 4 hours with that group. But on top of that, to ensure you get the return on your investment, I'll come back to your company in between those training programs to talk individually with each student in the class to make sure that I'm helping reinforce the training lesson from the month before. Because typically what happens after a training conference is the research will show that you get inspired and you're excited, right? But when it comes to implementing, you quite often return to the baseline where you started. So by me returning in 2 weeks and working individually, I'm ensuring your return on investment, and I'm becoming a personal consultant to your entire organization.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And if someone wants to get in touch with you to kind of
free to
get their way, how can they do that?
A number of ways, right? So certainly you can go on the website, right, which is clearwayforwardllc.com, right? The organizational email is lead-well@clearwayforwardllc.com, right? And then I'm out there on Twitter, LinkedIn under John Griffin.
Got it.
Yeah,
got it.
So let's connect.
Got it. So that's one of the ways, and we were also chatting a little bit more. You're pursuing your doctorate in organizational management, but
sure.
in addition to working with companies, teaching and engaging with employees. You're also at the Naval War College.
I am,
in
yeah.
Newport, which
That's
is
right.
a pretty prestigious place to be.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, right? I'm really fortunate to kind of continue to serve. And that's nice, like the life of a professor, right? You have the opportunity to balance and manage your schedule. So I can consult and I can continue to work at the War College. And one of the departments I teach in at the War College is leadership and ethics. So we're teaching senior level naval officers, and really from across the Joint Force, to include admirals, about enterprise leadership. Right. So it's not only me just sharing my own personal stories, right? I'm teaching at the enterprise level at the War College and pursuing, right, what's now cutting edge modern research at Northeastern.
Yeah,
and I could bring all that to your organization.
Well, I'm sure in both regards, having 28 years in the military,
Sure.
especially at the Naval War College, the students there know you have some experience behind
That's right.
you, right?
Yeah.
So that I'm sure makes it a little bit more interactional and students, a lot more engaged, right?
Right. Yeah. Certainly.
Well, John, it's been great to have you on the show. I know we're going to work with you, try to get the word out as we help our companies improve in the region. But thank you again for being a member of our chamber. Thank you for your service and continued work in that regard.
Sure.
And